Continues and Banfield starts right now.
Welcome, everyone. It is yet again a night of breaking news. It's 10 p.m. in the East. It's 7 p.m. in Los Angeles. And if you are in the L.A. area, anywhere near the two biggest and still mostly unchecked wildfires, first of all, I hope you are safe and that your family and your friends are safe. And second, I hope you're inside. And I hope you're planning to stay inside, at least until the sun comes up, because a curfew went into effect 1 hour ago in the Pacific Palisades, west of downtown, near the coast, and in Altadena, north and east of Los Angeles in the foothills. Those are still two of the worst wildfires tonight, tearing across the dry cityscape and decimating homes. And if you're out and about, know this: you are breaking the law, and police are watching, hoping to keep homes that survived the fires or might still be in harm's way safe while their owners have run for their lives. It's sad to even report that those homes have to be kept safe from looters, bottom of the barrel scum, people who see opportunity in their neighbors' abject misery and then just go ahead and rob them blind. The new LA County DA told me that his office will show no mercy when these vultures show up in court.
We are concerned. That's why I provided more police officers and more military. Look, the DOD is in full bore with this. We're providing everything from security through the military, the National Guard, supplementing the National Guard, because there's clear evidence that there's looting. There's clear evidence that people are going into these surviving, even places where they're evacuated, and it's not all rubble, and people are going in and they're looting.
And there are people lurking out there who are going to try and rip them off through scams. We're going to go after those people as well. And they'll be looking at going to jail. They'll be looking at going to prison. They'll be looking to pay back anything they stole. They'll be looking at community service. There isn't a type of punishment we won't consider for them, because basically I view these crimes as despicable when people take advantage of people in their lowest moments and sort of the worst tragedy that has affected their lives, and people want to come in and profit from it. They'll be dealt with as harshly as we possibly can.
So that's Nathan Hochman, the DA. You also heard from President Biden, important because he said today that the Pentagon stepped up when it was clear that LA law enforcement needed the help because of the looters, the scammers, and the cheaters. So when the curfew kicked in an hour ago, something else expired. And I'm telling you, this might be the best news of the day. The red flag warning. It expired. It's been in effect throughout this disaster, but now, thank God, it is over. If you live in a different sort of climate, that may be an unfamiliar term, but for the people who live in LA, it means the weather is hot enough and dry enough and windy enough to create, in effect, a perfect storm for wildfire. So with that red flag warning being over, at least some nerves will be calmed. Nobody, honestly, is saying that the danger is over in and around Los Angeles. Far from it. But the firefighters say that this was the best day that they've had since all hell broke loose on Tuesday. The single biggest active fire, the Palisades fire, is now said to be, wait for it, 8% contained. Doesn't sound like much, but it is progress after days and days of 0%. Then the Eaton fire near Altadena, that's east and north of LA, that is at 3% containment. So between them, those two fires have now burned 35,000 acres. If you don't know what that is in size, it is bigger than the city of San Francisco by 5 acres. More than 10,000 homes and buildings are gone tonight. 11,000 people, or 11 people rather. Some counts have it at 10, some at 11. We're still waiting for official confirmation. Those people have lost their lives. And before I bring in my NewsNation colleague, Brian Enton, I've got to take note of one more inconvenient truth in the Golden State, and that is earthquakes. Yes, an earthquake happened. While we look at the live pictures of the inferno roiling through Los Angeles, and it is still hard to believe this is still going on 80 plus hours into this inferno, into these wildfires, a minor earthquake 3.7 magnitude shook the coast off of San Francisco. That happened about 7 o'clock this morning. Thank God little or no damage resulted, but it did rattle a lot of coffee cups given what is happening south of them. Again, live pictures for you tonight as these fires continue to just rage, mostly out of control. I want to bring in Brian Enton now. Brian, you have been our eyes and ears on the ground. Tell me where you are right now and what you're seeing 1 hour into curfew.
Yeah, we're right outside the Palisades. We're down here along the Pacific Ocean, the highway down here, and it's so eerie. It's pitch black out here. Besides the police lights behind me, there's no electricity in the area, so it's totally dark. And the curfew went into effect a couple of hours ago, 6 o'clock local time, so they get everybody off the street. No one's allowed to be out unless you're a first responder or a member of the media. And everybody is just sort of, I think, still in a state of shock over the whole thing. It's gotten more smoky tonight. People are obviously still concerned about the fires, but also people, returning to their homes throughout the day, for the first time. And we've been covering it, but people were actually allowed back into some of these areas for the first time, and just shocked by what they found today, Ashleigh.
Yeah, help me understand that, because I cannot even imagine the range of emotions upon seeing that everything you've ever known and had is just gone.
Yeah, look, so we're at this checkpoint here. The National Guard is here too, by the way, because of the looters, which you mentioned. And today there were just people lined up begging to get through, and they're not letting the public in yet. It's just not safe enough with the fires, with the, there's power lines down, and there's gas, still the gas is uncapped in many places, and water line breaks. It's terrible up there. So people were begging to get in and wanting medicine all day. We met this one man, his name was Miles, and they let him in. They said, you can go in for 1 minute to get your medicine. They drove him up, and his house, he thought it was going to be okay, and because the front looked okay, a neighbor had sent a picture, but the whole back was gone and burned out, and he came back so distraught. And you see that happen time and time and time again, and it's just terrible.
Do you know if he was able to get any medicine, or was there just nothing salvageable for him?
He was able to get his medicine. There was another man, I probably shouldn't even say this, but whatever. You're human first. There was another man who needed his heart medicine, and we brought him up. We brought him in our car up because, we can get up as being part of the media. So he was able to go up with his son, get in the house, get medicine, get some clothes. His house was, for the most part, okay, yet all of the houses around his were burned down. He doesn't know why his was the one still standing. But, I think they're honestly still in shock. Like, everyone I've talked to, or not everyone, many of them say they haven't really been able to feel anything yet. Imagine your whole town being gone, your whole neighborhood being gone. I think it just takes time for it to set in.
I'm going to talk about the looters in a moment, because I just can't believe, I literally want to spit every time I have to mention, this new fear that these poor victims who've run for their lives now have to contend with. But before I do that, I want to just make note of the live pictures on the screen, Brian. Yet again, more ridges are going up in flames, and this is the famous Mulholland Drive. I'm not sure if anybody there has gotten you up to speed. It seems to be just happening. Is this, let me just ask if this is Palisades, because I saw Mulholland at the top of the screen at one point. So this is still Palisades, this fire. The Palisades is only 8% contained, and at this point, Brian, 20,000 acres just in the Palisades, with Mulholland Drive sparking up as well. And when I hear that, I yet again get fearful of the people who live in, the most concentrated part of Los Angeles.
Yeah, Palisades has been raging since the beginning. It's insane that this thing has still not let up and is going so strong when you look at the pictures. Where we are seems to be, for the most part, out of the danger, but then there's other areas that are nervous. People are nervous there. And then when you go up, there's so many firefighters now, Ashleigh, compared to a couple of days ago. They've come in from all over. The airdrops are constant. And even I never covered a real fire like this before. I'm from Florida, the hurricanes and everything, and I never realized it's not just the water drops and the firefighters with the hoses. They go out on foot and they're moving dirt around, and it's a very, very physical job. They leave the fire trucks behind and they go walk these perimeters all along these neighborhoods, and they go all night long. They work so hard. It's unbelievable the work that they're doing, and they'll work all throughout the night.
The screen beside you is so incredibly helpful for people who live or know about the topography of Los Angeles, because what KTLA does, and this is our Los Angeles affiliate that's just been remarkable in its coverage throughout this whole week, they have been superimposing the maps over top of these fire zones with the street names. So I've been seeing Mulholland and Water and all these names of, let's see, Mandeville Fire Road was one of them that was up just recently. It's so helpful to sort of get your bearings, because at night it just looks like a bunch of mountains on fire. Now you can see that these are very, very busy cityscapes with streets where people live, and you can see just how threatening it still is. 80 hours into this. Let's get to the looting. Again, I want to spit when I say it, but people have started to ask for private help, private security to protect their homes when they flee, but that's also causing a problem, isn't it?
It is. I mean, this looting is unbelievable. When we first started live with you a couple nights ago, when the fires were still raging, I don't know if you remember me telling you, there were these scooter looters. They seemed like they were on scooters with the backpacks and on the bikes. And this is when all the first responders were so preoccupied with the fire. And that seems to be under control now, but it seems to be more organized. We've heard reports of people going in sprinter vans, and the van door opens and a whole group of people get out. And then many people's doors were left open because that's what they were told to do when they evacuated, in case the firefighters needed to go inside. I spoke with one resident here in the Palisades. They've kind of formed these neighborhood watch groups. Listen to what he told me.
We have chased people away. There's some people who are active in the area who stayed behind, and they're reporting that we need help. And we think this latest crackdown is helpful, but we go around the streets, there's no one here, and anyone can come up here and get stuff, so we need help.
And it has gotten better, Ashleigh. Like I said, the National Guard is here, which frees up the police to do more patrols. But there's still reports. There's no cell service, so people have a hard time, because if you see something and you're up there, who are you going to call?
They are surviving a crisis, and they are surviving criminals. It's just hard to say that. It just makes you so mad, and I know that viewers who are watching us right now are probably as angry as you and I and those residents are, that there are these bottom feeders, just bottom-feeding scum that do this in the time of disaster and need. I want to switch gears a little here, Brian, and I want to talk a little bit about the Phos-Chek fire retardant spreading planes. That's the red stuff that you see them spitting out. Phos-Chek, it's a fertilizer-based fire retardant, and those incredible super scoopers that have been scooping up water from massive water bodies, if not the ocean, salt water, and dropping it and hitting their target so remarkably. Let me play a little bit of that, and then I want to ask you a question on the other side. Let's roll it.
Oh, it looks like something's coming in there. Maybe it's LA City, but
yeah, LA City.
Fire. There we are. Yeah, there's a Hawk. So
good shot.
That's also more powerful aircraft. So.
That's a great drop right there.
It seems like in a matter of minutes, a very short time, which is so encouraging to see in these incidents, fire crews attacking the fire. It looks like they've been able to put out a majority of it.
They're dropping water on this fire because that was a resource that was not available last night. And of course, a lot of people are wondering which direction this will go, and I believe southwest is where it's. Oh, look at that drop right there. Southwest is where it's headed, and that's why the warning goes all the way over to Coldwater Canyon.
Amazing. Just amazing stuff. All right. So, Brian, I just wanted to ask you really quickly. I only have about 20 seconds here, but do you hear them above you? Do you hear those airships, the super scoopers the helicopters and the bombers that are dropping water and retardant? You do?
There are places we've been where we see them every 5 minutes. Heroic work. And by the way, I don't know if you've heard, but one of the super scoopers is damaged. There was a drone that went up yesterday. There was about a baseball-sized hole in one of the super scoopers that came from Canada. It's now been grounded, and the FBI has been brought out here to put in this technology to keep drones away, which kind of like the looters, it just makes you so mad that one of those planes won't be repaired for several days because someone was dumb enough to put a drone up.
Well, I've got big coverage coming on that in just a moment. So I'm going to let you go collect news because I know that's what you've been doing. Brian, you've just done such an incredible job. You and Nancy Liu, I hope you're going to get some rest. Thank you for everything you've been doing.
Thanks, Ash.
All right, as Brian checks out that checkpoint behind him to see if there's any other news, I want to go to our KTLA affiliate. They've been monitoring live some of these bombers. Whether it's water or whether it's retardant, it is unbelievable what these people can do. These pilots are so exact. Don't forget, it's hard enough to hit a target. Now add the winds that have been all over the place, depending on where you are in the canyons. So I want to just jump into their coverage live and listen in.
During these Santa Ana winds, the ignition points tend to be down power lines or sparks off of generators, anything like that. But if there isn't that, then mostly it's human error. Not saying that someone would do this on purpose, but human error can be the ignition point, and that's why it's very crucial that we're careful, because Santa Ana winds don't automatically mean that there's going to be an event. If there's a Santa Ana wind in conjunction with a monsoon season, like in the summer, that's when we get those storms that produce dry lightning, and that is what creates the ignition point then. But we don't have dry lightning and we don't have storms in place. If anything changes with the winds, I will let you know, but for now I'll send it back to you guys.
Vera, I think it's critically important that we point out, not to minimize the threat that we're looking at here, but the weather conditions, the weather pattern in place right now is not what we saw on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. This is an onshore flow, and as you said, there's more humidity in the air. But again, it's not the same weather pattern that we saw throughout the week.
No, it is. Right now, we're looking at onshore flow. So this is pushing inland. This is, instead of the smoke, you'll see the smoke. It's not going towards the Pacific Ocean now. It's moving inland to the interior, and not minimizing none of what's going on. But I just want us to remember that we have to be really careful with what we do as individuals.
Absolutely. Right. And keep in mind, again, so you're seeing the smoke in areas where you haven't before because the winds have shifted, and they're actually, not as threatening in terms of the winds because there's more moisture in the air. It's not what we saw throughout the week. Right.
And more importantly, Micah, the speeds are not quite as strong. Yeah. We're looking at speeds with the gust. The stronger gusts still in the teens. We're not even in the 20s. So it looks dangerous and it looks scary, but we also don't want people to panic.
Right.
Right. I think that when you get these evacuation warnings and mandatory evacuation orders, people of course tend to panic, and because of what we've been through as a whole, as a city in the last couple of days. But that is some welcome news to hear that the winds are in the teens, and what we saw at the beginning of this horrific and tragic week was very different than what we're looking at right now.
I'm just jumping back into our coverage here because what that local anchor at KTLA was just talking about is significant, the winds. The bad news is, even though those fire red flag alerts have been taken down, the winds and gusts are supposed to increase tonight. And it's not supposed to be a very good weekend for wind and gusts either. And if winds are too strong, as you will understand, those firefighting aircraft cannot take off, which makes it even worse. I want to bring in Chris Anderson at this point. He lives in Altadena, where the Eaton fire has destroyed almost 14,000 acres. And in those acres once stood his mom and his brother's home, and his aunt and his uncle's home, and countless other homes belonging to his friends. The entire neighborhood where Chris lives is also gone. Chris, thank you for being here. I am so sorry that you're going through this with your fellow Los Angeles citizens. It's hard to comprehend for the rest of us on the other side of the country what you all are going through. But where are your family members? Who's taking them in? Who's looking after them?
We're actually spread all over. We're not all together. We didn't want to be too much of a burden on one person. So my mom and sister-in-law's in one place, my brother's in another place, and then me and my sons are in another place. So, and then my uncle's in another place.
I'm not sure if you have, survivor's guilt, because all of these people, all of your family members lost their homes, and somehow in a neighborhood that completely burned down, yours, thank God, is still standing.
Yeah, I was amazed because I got a call in the morning that the entire neighborhood burnt down from a neighbor crying, distraught, told me it's not even worth going up to see it. I thought I'd go up anyway to salvage what I could. And I'm driving through and we're talking about blocks and blocks and blocks of nothing. Everything's burnt down. I couldn't even tell where I was because landmarks were gone. And I'm driving down my street, both sides of the street, everything's burnt down. You can look up 2 or 3 more streets because there's no homes or vegetation or anything to block your line of sight. And then I pull up and my house was intact. I don't know what happened. I don't know how it happened, but it did.
When you went back to your mom and your uncle's house and saw that, it was destroyed, there were still fires burning. Like, you're literally still trying to put out fires, aren't you?
Yeah, the first day that I got to my house was intact, but there was a fire growing to the east of my house. So I was desperately trying to get help to put it out because, like I said, it was growing. It wasn't very large at the beginning, but in the time that I was at the house, it expanded quickly. So I, started using bottles of water and whatever I could find to try and knock it down, asking local fire crews for help. Got lucky, was driving down the street, saw people getting interviewed, and a reporter was nice enough to interview me. She literally pushed for the home studio to let me on live. And, that video really helped me get a lot of people up there to help put out that fire and save my house.
Chris Anderson, we are thinking of you, your fellow Americans. We are all behind you in Los Angeles and the surrounding area as you are in your moment of need. Thank you for telling us your story, and the best of luck to you. God bless you all and your family.
Thank you very much for having me on.
So as Chris Anderson and his family try to put the pieces back together, take a look at what you saw on your screen. This is live yet again. The Holland Drive burning, new fires cropping up on the hill ridges. And what's amazing to see is how bright they burn and how you can see the airships still flying all night long and dropping the water and the retardant on those fires. When you see them land their targets, it's a strange and satisfying joy just to see that they're having some success. And the numbers do bear out slightly. Palisades fire, 8% contained now. It's been 0 all week. Eaton fire, 3% contained. It's been 0 all week. Hearst, 37% contained. Lydia, 75% contained. Kenneth fire, that's in the Calabasas area where live last night we told you it had just sparked up. Kenneth fire is now 35% contained. Archer fire, 0% contained. This fire is just jaw-dropping, just to see it. Again, we are 80 hours plus into this crisis, and it just doesn't seem to want to abate. Even though the winds aren't as bad as they have been, they are still there, and they're picking up again tonight. And fire-weary Californians are relying on the help from above. I do mean prayer, but I also mean those giant planes filled with water. They are flown by highly skilled pilots who can hit their targets like no one else. When the wind drops down enough to let them up, they can do their work. So how was it that a drone flew right into one of these lifesavers, forcing it to be grounded? And not just one airship was grounded, a whole fleet had to land when that happened. What's going to happen to the person behind the controls of that drone that took those lifesavers out of service? That's next. When LA firefighters and reinforcements coming in from neighboring states and countries actually finally get the best of these wildfires, water bombing is likely to be a big reason why. Aerial firefighting is another term for water bombing. And while helicopters have their uses, they cannot compare to the firefighting planes from Canada called Super Scoopers. The Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, posted about the Scoopers' latest mission with a message reading, "Neighbors helping neighbors." But as super as these Scoopers are, they can only help when they are in the sky. And now one of the two that are supposed to be in the skies over Southern California is not there. Seems that somebody launched a drone, which they absolutely were not supposed to do, and that drone collided with a Super Scooper and punched a hole in the wing of the aircraft, which sent the aircraft to the ground. It did land safely, but it is down. It's grounded now, and it's grounded until Monday at the earliest. Another just gut punch. Multiple other firefighting planes had to land as well because of the continuing threat of the drone. So they're all doing this life-saving work, home-saving work, business-saving work, and yet they all had to come down because of one drone. And the Los Angeles County Fire Chief is more pissed than I am.
One important topic I want to talk about is that we did have a drone incursion yesterday at the Palisades fire. Unknown exactly what time this small drone hit the wing of our CL-415 Super Scooper aircraft that we currently have on contract from the province of Quebec. The pilots were unaware that they hit the drone. It wasn't until they landed at Van Nuys Airport that the maintenance staff noticed that there was a fist-sized hole in the leading edge of the wing inboard of the landing light. That Super Scooper will be prioritized for repair 24/7. It should be flying Monday. We only have 2 of them. Everyone should know, all of your viewers, flying a drone in the fire traffic area is not only dangerous, but it's illegal. If you fly a drone at one of these brush fires, all aerial operations will be shut down.
Who knows how many homes and how many buildings, maybe even people, could have been saved by that airplane and the other planes that were grounded? How many millions of dollars of damage could have been prevented because those planes could have kept working? I'm joined by Robert D'Amico. He's a retired FBI supervisory special agent. Robert, I don't even know what to say. I'm so angry about something like this. But the truth is, I do want to ask you about restricted airspace because it seems that drones fly very low. Do they fly at the same altitude as these bombers?
Well, it's unfortunate. And again, it goes back to American society of like, oh, I'm more important. I'm going to fly my drone over firefighting efforts. But like you said, a drone's normally supposed to be flown 400 feet and below. That's unrestricted airspace. And the controller is supposed to have visual sight of the drone. But these planes are actually probably flying lower than that. And this drone operator may have been flying above 400 feet. So you don't know, but if they see any drone in the area, they have to pull out the planes just to be safe. So it's a selfish act. Drones can be used by firefighters and others in these fires for good purposes, but not someone just thinking, oh, I can fly this up. I want to get cool coverage, or I want to see if my house is protected. It's just selfish.
Yeah, and they'll get in trouble. I mean, that's what the law enforcement authorities have said. We will find you, and the full force of the law will come down on you. It's a federal offense, and it's big. I mean, there's jail time up to a year, $75,000 fines. It's serious stuff. I have to ask you, because we keep looking on the right-hand side of the screen at the live firefighting that's going on with these airships. And I said it before, I'll say it again. It's so satisfying, Robert, to see them land their target, but at the same time, when you zoom out, it feels like a needle in a haystack. Is it?
It is. I mean, it is. But they have to take the approach that one part at a time, piece by piece, and they're so used to doing this that they understand it and they know it. And you, like you talked about though, with the drones, the TFRs up, at least they got the word out. People now should be looking up. There's NOTAMs, notice to airmen or notice to air missions, that tell people that it's illegal to fly. Some drones have software that doesn't let them fly. But again, when you're fighting this effort, they had probably a very clear pattern that they were going to fly that they all had to pull off on until it's safe. And that's what disrupts it, because they probably predicted the real priority of the fire, and then they had to pull these planes off. And those planes can only fly in certain wind speeds, and that was what's keeping them down. So they had a good time to fly them, and then they had to pull it out for some selfish act like we saw.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. Retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent Robert D'Amico, thank you for your time tonight and for your expertise. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
As we continue to zero in on these live pictures, again, 80 plus hours into this crisis, and it looks the same as it did on Tuesday night. It's been a big reminder this week that fire does not care who you are or what you have, even if you have a lot and if you're super famous, like the Kardashians. After a break, popular podcaster Kate Casey tells us where that extended family is tonight after running for their lives. And in their worst moment, while they were fleeing, what they were doing to help firefighters. That's next. Got some live pictures I want to show you, and I want to listen in, if I can, to this helicopter pilot. A moment ago on KTLA, he was broadcasting live and giving some really critical information. Let's listen to what he's saying now.
If you're in it, if you know someone who lives in that area, you may well know that it was an evacuation warning area. It has since been shifted to an immediate evacuation order because of this flare-up tonight. But again, the winds are nothing like what we saw on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So take a degree of comfort in knowing that the conditions are not what we had when we saw that explosive fire behavior. That said, this is a large flare-up. Firefighters are on this with an enormous amount of aerial assets, as we've heard. 10 helicopters pulling water from the Encino Reservoir, and it's a matter of minutes on their turnaround time. So they're on this. They're slowing the advance of these flames, but heed the evacuation order if you're in that zone tonight.
A lot of people from the Valley were calling around 3, 4 o'clock this afternoon when this started to flare up, and they thought this was a new fire, and were wondering what to do if this was a new fire, if it was heading down their way. And then it kind of just stayed there. But what happened is that this is actually the same Palisades fire that has grown in size and grown in intensity, as you can see, and is at that northeastern flank of the fire there and near and threatening the Mandeville Canyon area, also Mulholland Drive. Now, you heard the evacuation order. That is an order that means you must go again. And that in effect from Sunset Boulevard north to Encino Reservoir to the 405 west to Mandeville Canyon. And I think that, at this point, when we do get an update on this Palisades fire, the latest numbers that we have today is that it burned 21,317 acres and was 8% contained. Those numbers surely are probably going to change now as we watch this water dropping helicopter load up, and one of 10, as you mentioned, Micah, that are making the turnaround to drop water on this fire and make that firefight.
And it's a matter of minutes.
I'm just going to jump back in here because every time you go over a dark area, you wonder if it is a reservoir, and that is the Encino Reservoir. You're watching that airship. It's just such a scene. Look at it. He hovers down. He gets his buckets down into the water and loads those buckets. I'll tell you what, I was a reporter back in 1988, and one of my first assignments was in northern Canada to look at firefighting, and I flew up to these fire-stricken zones, and I watched this happen in real time. It's devastating and awesome all at the same time to see what the power of these ships is like up close and personal. In the dark, it just looks like lights and some wind on the water, but man, oh man, the skill involved, especially at night, for these pilots to be able to get close enough to the water, but not too close, to fill those buckets properly and to get them up into the air and then off to the target where they're being assigned. It is just a feat of remarkable accomplishment. And I pray for every one of these pilots that they stay safe as they do this God's work for all the people below who are so desperate to see them come to their neighborhood. I've watched people as they look up into the sky and they watch one of these airships pass over them, calling out, please, here, drop it here, because little brush fires are sparking up around them. And of course, they're going for the biggest fires and the most dangerous, containment lines that they need. I think the chopper pilot's talking again. Let's listen.
Very close, very convenient, and it's really making a difference in this firefight.
And know, too, that there is an aerial operations commander orchestrating all of this. It's not haphazard. They're not just coming and going as they need or as they see. It's all being coordinated. And they're being directed in and directed out specifically by an air ops coordinator, much like a ballet, like an orchestra. They're all working together, but doing it obviously in a safe manner, specifically at night when it's so difficult to see, in many cases, what's in front of you, let alone what's behind you.
It is incredible to watch. And like moments ago, we saw 3 of them at the Encino Reservoir taking in some water there. And like you said, it's all orchestrated. It's all happening from, like an air traffic controller, making sure that they're all in sync and dropping where they need to drop that water. And we've been seeing those water drops one after the other. And, just hope that as they are tenacious about this and keep on going there, we hear one after the other, that it'll make a difference tonight and not go into the neighborhood.
Gil, show us where that the Mulholland line is. I know there was some Phos-Chek drop. It's right along Mulholland Drive there. It's close to the top of that ridge?
It's still reporting. Yeah, you can see the line here. I have the map up, I believe, for you. Yes, we do. And here's Mulholland Drive and the Mandeville Fire Road. That's Mulholland Drive where the fire apparatuses are. It's a compressed shot, so it looks like the fire's a lot closer than it actually is. Mm-hmm. There's the crews there. You see the power lines that are running through the background there, and you see fire crews that will come up on areas like this. There's firefighters that are out there spotting the fire, keeping an eye on the movement, the progression of the fire, and probably also assisting with the water dropping targets, directing the helicopters in to certain pinpoint places that are very urgent to get in there. So that's Mulholland Drive. It looks a lot closer than it is. The fire looks a lot closer to Mulholland because of the compressed shot. But this is the area where the helicopters are really hitting this fire hard and keeping it from getting there onto Mulholland Drive.
And of course, it's the embers. That's what we always worry about, and that's what caused just so much destruction. The wind and the speed of the wind that we experienced the last couple of days is not the case tonight, thankfully. But obviously, this is still a massive concern for a lot of communities. And many people in the Encino-Tarzana area have already left their homes and have gone to other places to seek, some shelter and away from the fires. But it's so hard to get away from here in Los Angeles with not just this fire burning, but we also have the Eaton fire burning that's burned some 13,000 plus acres there. And, we've got 6 fires happening at the same time. The 2 biggest ones, of course, this one, the Palisades fire, and the Eaton fire that has destroyed some 7,000 plus structures there. So, we just hope that they get a handle on this. And Gil, this part of the fire that we're looking at right now, obviously the most intense. How does the rest of the fire look, on the other side of this flank?
Yeah, let me come out to a wider shot. You see a big heli tanker there dropping here. I was listening to the assignment desk right now, but as far as you're saying the further south than this fire line, mm-hmm. Is that right, Cher?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's burned through all that hillside. Let me bring in the map again for you, the satellite view, and it'll give you an idea of what's already burned. I'm going to push in beyond the flames right now, and all this terrain that you see here has already burned through, all the way from the south side where all the homes are, near the Pacific Palisades and Santa Monica is burned all the way through there. And as I come back to a live picture, you'll see where it's burned through and where the fire currently is. So a lot of terrain, a lot of thick brush that was in there that has burned, and that's why this continues to be like a volcano. All that dry brush that hasn't burned in a while is now finally burning in this Santa Monica mountain range.
And a lot of what we're seeing with these flame lengths is when the fire line crests the ridge, which is where you'll see the highest flame lengths. And that's what they're trying to do, is hit it right on that ridge from what we've seen.
Yes.
And again, the fire is going to move uphill faster than it moves downhill. Again, absent violent winds, which we're not seeing. These are, again, winds in the teens, as Vera's been reporting, which makes this situation far more manageable for firefighters, particularly with the amount of resources they have on it. There's a degree of confidence here that they're going to be able to make a significant impact on the advance of these flames. Again, as they approach what we know to be a Phos-Chek line that was laid along the Mulholland line to prevent this fire or dramatically slow it. Now consider that when the fire reaches that Phos-Chek line, it's going to struggle to get through it. And that's going to be an opportunity for firefighters as well from the air to just pound it. That's an eventuality. This fire will reach that line, which is essentially along that Mulholland line that you see there. But again, the flame lengths, particularly dramatic when they crest the ridge, and again will shorten considerably as the fire begins to sort of back down the hill. Difficult to see at night, but Gil, that satellite image you show is most helpful for people who might be just joining us to understand. Obviously, we're looking at fire, but where it lies in context with the different communities impacted.
Yeah, let me bring that in again here. So you see the fire line where it's burned from the south to the north. That's the current location of the fire line. And as I bring in the map, you'll see all the area that has burned already from the south, from Sunset Boulevard basically all the way up here to the top of almost to Mulholland Drive. And all that area is already burned. And as I come back to the live picture, you can see there that the fire has reached, the northern flank here has reached all the way and almost to Mulholland Drive at this point.
All right, we want to bring in Vera Jimenez, meteorologist, and she has a perspective here, obviously with the winds, what we can expect, and how we're just really not out of the woods yet. And I think that more than anything is not just worrisome, but it's exhausting to think of that, you know, we are at this point where how much more can this city take?
Well, we are still going to be looking at a dry and windy weekend, and once we get through the weekend, those winds are going to continue, and they are again going to be winds out of the northeast. The other part of the equation, of course, is the relative humidity, and with that, we also have a lot of dry vegetation. Keep in mind that we just came out of 2 really wet years. Remember that we had a lot of the atmospheric river systems that were just coming into, especially the northwestern end of the region, you know, Santa Barbara, Ventura, and even the northwestern end of the San Fernando Valley, which is basically what we're looking at in terms of as it moves towards Encino. So we had 2 extremely wet years for Southern California, and now we are looking at starting the year as, according to the National Weather Service, the driest start of the water year. Now, if you're not familiar with the water year goes from October to April, which means that we're already 4 months into the water year. We haven't had any real rain this month. We've had a little bit, but nothing significant. And in terms of the season, we are almost 5 inches below where we should be for this time of year in terms of the water season. Now, we still have a couple of months. Doesn't mean that once April gets here, we're not going to get any rain. It's Mother Nature, and we never know what's going to happen. But the chances of us getting rain beyond April diminish, and they diminish significantly. The next time or the next opportunity that we will see for rain will be during the monsoon season, but that happens in the summer. It happens in June, July, August, maybe even as late as September. And those rains tend to happen over the Inland Empire, over the deserts. That's when we get those dry lightning. That's when we get the flash flooding over the desert areas. But in terms of what we are seeing now and what we're experiencing now, it's not just the winds, it's the abundance of fuel. And it's not just fuel, it's almost dead fuel, because again, we haven't had any rain, and this fuel hasn't had the opportunity to grow in terms of thickness, if you will. So it's a lot of fine vegetation, fine grasses that tend to dry out extremely quickly, and that also burn extremely quickly. Remember, the thicker something is, the longer it tends to dry out, it takes to dry out, and the slower it burns. But when you have all of this fresh grass that we got from the 2 years of rain, this is the kind of activity that we get when we do have fires. It just moves and it just gobbles up, even if there isn't wind. If a fire starts, that's what we call a fuel-driven fire versus a wind-driven fire. And in this particular instance, you happen to have both in play. You have winds to push it along, and you have the fuel to feed it along. And so that was just the perspective that I wanted to add as we were talking about the vegetation and the spread and the downsloping. And yes, it is moving slower, but yes, it is being fed as well.
You know, and it really is, Vera, a double-edged sword. You talk about a wet year and all the fuels that are created with all the water and the growth, which is a wonderful thing. And you juxtapose that with a dry start to the year that you're describing, that we've seen in the past, although this is apparently a record start to this water year in terms of dryness. All of that wonderful moisture and fuel, the moisture goes away, but you still have the fuel, and it becomes a tinderbox and becomes, explosive.
It does, and sometimes when the fire is this intense and it's this hot, sometimes the fuel will actually burn before the fire even gets to it, because it's so fine and it's so dry that it turns to ash before it actually even gets to there. Now, that doesn't happen very often, but in rare occasions like we have, because we've not had these winds before, and when we have the conditions that we have present as we do now, you do see that in some areas when the fire is very intense.
Yeah, and there's an enormous amount of fuel in here again in this area that we're watching burn tonight, and firefighters knew. Obviously, this fire creeping east, right? You had the offshore wind, so it was pushing out west, and that's when we saw all the destruction. And now the fire is kind of creeping back to the east, and it's this eastern flank that is now encountering all those fuels we're talking about that are just so tinder dry from the last several months of zero precip.
Yep. Exactly. I mean, almost 5 inches below where we should be.
Yeah.
And keep in mind that for the rain season, we've had less than 1/4 of an inch.
Yeah, it's astonishing. And what we're seeing here is extreme shifts. We have an entirely wet year. We have another record wet year, followed we're not seeing the moderate.
No.
We're seeing the extreme, whether it's really, really wet or really, really dry.
Right. And, those extreme winds that we had on Tuesday and Wednesday were all due to an area of low pressure that had an air mass that was extremely cold. And so it created this extreme environment where the winds were very, very strong because of the pressure difference between, what happened here closer to the equator and where that system was coming from obviously from the Arctic, so from the north. And so, yes, we're seeing very dangerous conditions. Thankfully, this next system that is going to be dropping in over the weekend and hanging out until Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. This is a typical area of low pressure that comes in out of Canada, out of the Gulf of Alaska. And at this point, with that system that's approaching, what we are having a challenge with is the position of that area of low pressure and whether or not it is going to completely detach itself from the jet stream. Because when an area of low pressure detaches itself from the jet stream, it doesn't have anything to steer it along. The mechanism that moves it along through the atmosphere detaches itself and it just meanders in the area. And so depending on the position of that area of low pressure, it could be another system that is dry, or perhaps we could get a little bit of rain. And because at this point it's several days out, and because the system that is arriving isn't clearly defined, it's hard for us to be able to forecast whether or not we're going to get that rain or not. Whether it's going to be an inside slider, meaning it travels over the continent and dries out, or if it travels along the Pacific and actually becomes beneficial to us.
Understood. A degree of uncertainty that many days out, it becomes in the clear focus as we get closer. But in the near term, firefighters are dealing with this. And this is on the northeast flank of the Palisades fire. There's a whole lot of unburnt fuel in here. And Gil Davis in Sky 5 is remarking about how many times he's flown over this area, this open space area, for many, many years, covering stories to and fro across Southern California. Very familiar with this terrain and the beauty of it that once was, Gil.
That's right, Micah and Sherry. Yeah, definitely flying over there, seeing all the hiking trails, seeing all the power lines. We all, when we fly, we all know where those power lines are to be safe and clear them. Just a beautiful area for hiking and having the ocean nearby. It's just quite a sight, but always thinking about, boy, I hope we never get a fire in there because there's so much brush in there. In fact, as I zoom in, you can see the brush on the ridge line there, right?
I want to just jump in. It's Ashleigh Banfield at NewsNation, just to update you at the top of the hour what you're seeing if you're just tuning in. This is the terrifying view of what happens when a fire creeps up to the top of a ridge and suddenly the skies are illuminated. This is the view from the helicopter gunships that are fighting this fire near the Encino Reservoir in the Palisades. And yes,